Hi, and welcome back to the channel. 5 more films this week, 5 different labels. Stick around till after the break. Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. This is my watch list the past few weeks. What I've been watching and what I found interesting in that little of time, and it is definitely coming to the end of the summer. It's coming to the end of blockbuster season, and we're going to start with a 1977 blockbuster with an amazing score by John Williams. It is indeed John Frankenheimer's Black Sunday. You were expecting something else? This does indeed have a John Williams score to it, but it is a disaster movie or a terrorist attack that sort of bleeds into a disaster movie. Black Sunday, as you can see from the cover, involves a blimp, involves a big crowd, and it tells the story of a foreign attack that looks to kill, massacre amounts of people at the Super Bowl. John Frankenheimer is an interesting director. He had this focus on like political ideology with action and all that kind of stuff, and we have a pretty lengthy runtime movie that starts off kind of exploring the political machinations of the Palestine-Israel movement, and then their attempts to take on and influence America, seek retribution or otherwise, and do it through the guise of committing a terrorist attack there. So we looked at the people that are involved on the political side at the start, then the people that they need to manipulate and move into position, which includes Bruce Dern, and then the people that are trying to catch it and stop it. Black Sunday is a film I'd never heard of, which again fits with the whole Frankenheimer narrative a lot of times. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. In fact, it navigates this, I think, over a long time. Definitely has that feeling of that Alan J. Pakula conspiracy movie in it. There's some good exploration of the motivations of the people that want to do it, why they're doing it. But the main part of it is about a manipulation of Bruce Dern's character, who happens to be a blimp pilot and who is well decorated, but he has some trauma. Well, trauma probably being the wrong word, but has some difficult problems in his past with his kids and his family and all the rest of it. And he's trying to make some retribution in life for himself. So when he becomes and feels special, he can't help himself in some ways. Like I say, John Williams score, Frankenheimer directed, and we have some pretty decent extras on this. There's a commentary by Stephen Prince, which I found excellent. Then we have an interview with the film music historian Daniel Schweiger about the score by John Williams itself, and then a featurette with film historian Stephen Armstrong about John Frankenheimer. It's from 2020, and I thought it was brilliant. It's a good exploration of Frankenheimer and the ups and downs of his careers, and as a disaster movie, like I say, pretty great. Oh yeah, by the way, it has Robert Shaw in it as well, who sort of gets cast as this action, but not quite the top level action kind of guy. Don't know. Next one up. Well, I was at a quite recent Q&A screening with the great Darren Aronofsky, and one of the questions that he was asked from the audience that night was what did he consider to be the greatest queer film of all time. And perked up and went, God, there's a loaded question to ask somebody with no preparation. And he had said, probably Paris is Burning. Paris is Burning, I knew very little about, other than it was a documentary that came out in the Criterion collection, in recent memory, and was broadly speaking about nightlife in New York. That was about it. That's all I knew about it. So I stuck it on. I thought, I've got to see this. I've got to watch it and see what it is about it that feels quite special. I expected lavish outfits and, extravagant behaviour and all of those things. And I pressed play, and what I seen was Pose. Now, people are going to call me an idiot. People are going to ask me have I not been paying attention at any stage of form. But the TV series Pose, which, spoiler for those that haven't seen it, is incredible. Is a dramatization depiction of the people in Paris is Burning. Who knew? Who knew? Like, literally from the outset, the characters, the houses, the lifestyle, and how important this is to the people that are in it is all Pose. I mean, everything's the same, and I'm so here for it. So for those that haven't seen Pose or Paris is Burning, it tells the story of New York nightlife, sure, but in this ballroom setting where they would have these balls, and the balls are occasions to showcase and show off certain aspects of people's personality. So they'll have like a drag, it's a lot of very drag heavy, glamorous, or a bit like, you know, runway kind of contests. Like, we're looking for the autumn. This is an autumn look, we want an autumn look, and then people will parade and come along in drag, say they're the best in the category, or wearing a uniform as your category. Here's 5 or 6 people and they get judged and they get scored out of 10, a bit like Strictly Come Dancing or something at the end. 10s, 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 10s. It's a great premise in Pose, but it obviously originated here. But what it really goes to explore is actually what the people get out of it, one, to start. I mean, it's this great sense of community and of attainment and of goals and kind of this promise that you can be anything regardless of wealth or otherwise. And I sort of interject the dramatization of Pose with Paris is Burning here, because an awful lot about that show, and also, you know, in smaller part in this film, is about how these people have nothing and how it leads to crime and how it leads to status, and how actually everybody, regardless of their background or otherwise, wants the same thing. One of the really beautiful things about it, I think, is just how inclusive it is. And I've said that it's mostly drag, and I'm sure we only see a small section of the acts, etc., that are there, but there's an inclusivity part of it that says there's a category for everybody. Everybody's involved. Everybody can take part. Everybody can contribute, and it's just a wonderful, you know, depiction of the people and the places and the dreams of everybody that's there. Greatest queer film of all time? I mean, quite possibly. I thought it was utterly brilliant. The disc, and the commentary, and the extras, and the people that are involved all make up a really well-rounded Criterion release. And I thought it was wonderful. Could watch it again, and in fact just made me want to re-watch Pose. I mean, the fact that Billy Porter's character is a guy originally with the same diction that it's based on, fabulous, utterly fabulous. So where do you go from Paris is Burning? You go for a film that I wasn't sure I should talk about, but it comes from a label that I haven't talked about in a while and that I dearly love. I probably have a reputation for dearly loving, and that is Second Run. And this film is Ivan Passer's Intimate Lighting. Now, Intimate Lighting is a film where nothing happens, nothing of note. There's no real strong narrative arc that goes from start to finish, but it is a real slice of life in a small village. Have a family that's a musical family where everybody takes a part in musical activities. They perform at weddings, funerals, that kind of stuff, and they get together with some old family members who come home. They bring new girlfriends, etc., with them, and it's really about watching the difference between these people, how they get on, the relationships that they build, how the camaraderie they have. But it's really just, like I say, a bit of a slice of life. And I really was unsure about whether to talk about this at all. But my feeling coming away from it, in a week or so since I watched it, is that I've just such a warm feeling about it. It's a very light comedy. It does poke fun at some of the ridiculous nature of how families get on and how they celebrate and how they include people into a family but not include them. I just think the whole thing's quite wonderful. There's even a short film from Ivan Passer in here called Boring Afternoon, and it's from '64, and it does pretty much the same thing in a microcosm. It's a boring afternoon in a bar. People coming out of a football match come in, they talk, the group of women singing or knitting in the corner. The whole thing's just kind of just a lovely ambience and atmosphere about the entire thing. And while nothing happens, it is quite comical, it is quite funny, and it is quite delightful, and I'm here for that all the time. This is Intimate Lighting. This is something that I dearly loved, and you know, you could stick on, cheer yourself up one day till you see that maybe your problems aren't all bad. There's a humdrum and there's a beat of life to really get involved into. That's Intimate. Next one up from Indicator. And this one came out this year. I think this version sold out. I think it sold out quite quickly, but it fits with another theme that I've had over the past while, and that is Australian cinema. So I've put enough clues out there for you to probably guess that I'm talking about Mad Dog Morgan. The release with Dennis Hopper as Mad Dog Morgan, a convict on the run type of movie. Except I think it's a bit more than that. Philippe Mora is the director for this, and he tackles in this film to retell a story which is one of the earliest documented films that there ever was that is now lost, and it tells the story of Mad Dog Morgan himself, a guy who was a precursor to Ned Kelly, who is much more celebrated in film and book, about being a guy that was on the run and, you know, caused terror in his wake, and the authorities do anything to catch him. And this film does a lovely job of illustrating where Mad Dog Morgan came from, who he was, what caused him to be like this. Was he always just crazy? How it all devolved and how it ended up for him. And you as the viewer, spoiler a little bit, are kind of caught in the middle of establishment trying to catch him, and this guy who you don't really like his actions or what he does, but sort of see where he's coming from, or at least attempt to see where he's coming from and what he's doing. He teams up with David Gallopolo in it, so you get Mr. Gallopolo in there as a companion in here, and he is much more of a show the ropes kind of guy, as he often is, some of these things, but he learns from Dennis Hopper's character as well. And as usual, when you get an indicator release, it's not just about the film itself, which is also beautifully shot as well. I think it's a real treat to look at, but you have a release that really is worth investing time in. There are 2 commentaries in it, and both are amazing. The first one's from earlier, and you do this kind of, not as polished or anything, where they'll say, do you want to take a break in the middle of it? Takes you away. But it's a genesis of how they cast Dennis Hopper, what he was like to work with. There was some rumours of Gallopolo and Dennis Hopper not getting on for one stage, and in fact, Gallopolo goes on walkabout and they lose him and put the whole thing in danger at one time. I'll not say more than that, but all of this goes into it in the commentaries. I think they're some of the best and most interesting commentaries I've seen in a long while. You've got an interview with Mora himself. There's loads in it, and like I say, this is one of the special releases. So not only do you get your lovely release itself with the alternative artwork, you also get a pretty stacked booklet. It's one of the thicker ones that you'll see. It has an interview with Mora himself, some production notes on the writing before they did the first shooting as well. Really something great. There's also a poster in there, but I believe this one is sold out, so you might have to get, if you want the booklet and you want the poster, double-sided poster, you need to get it in the secondary market, I believe. But well worth your time and well worth your energy of doing that. I thought Mad Dog Morgan started off as a film that was a bit nihilistic and I was going to hate, but by the end it pulled itself around, both in terms of the beauty of how it was shot, the beauty of it was put together, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Which leaves me one film to talk about. So I usually keep my release of the week to the end, but that was sort of Paris is Burning. I think it's very hard to top Paris is Burning. But if I'm not going to pick my favourite release, then I'm going to pick something that's a bit celebrated that many people have seen before, that I've seen for the first time. This one is a French film from a very celebrated director. A very celebrated release that I know many people have seen is Jules et Jim. And Jules et Jim is delightful. It tells the story of Jules et Jim, an unlikely friendship between a Frenchman and an Austrian, played by an Austrian and a Frenchman. I just love how that gets put together, but it's a friendship of 2 men who their lives punctuated and split apart by a woman, Catherine, played by Jean Moreau. And Jean Moreau, who's captured here at the front, unless you don't see, is a free spirit. And they are free spirits to a certain degree as well. There's illustrated at the start that Jules and Jim kind of float between relationship to relationship without really wanting to be tied down. And the relationship is temporarily broken up by the First World War. One comes back, they go to live in Germany, one lives in France. They're kind of broken up, but they stay in touch. And, you know, it tells you about the status and how the status of relationship changes because of time, who people are as they progress. It tells of how circumstances can change love, how love itself can shape and make people compromise who they are. And it tells of a struggle of how people feel trapped by the virtues of the relationships, both romantic and non-romantic otherwise. Jules et Jim is wonderful. I'm making it sound like a comedy, and certainly there's a warm comedic element to it, but it's a very serious film at the heart of it as well. It got such a message to tell you and explain to you by the end, that, you know, for all the gaiety, for all the lightness, for all of the jovial nature of how everybody gets on in this sort of dream world and dream life, there's a message at the core of it that it wants to take away, and I just loved it. And I know an awful lot of people, like a lot of people have seen Jules at the Gym. It's not exactly an obscure movie, but if you haven't seen it, this is a pretty great release. I have a artificial eye version of it. It's pretty slim pickings. This one's very full featured. The booklet's pretty great in it. You know, it goes to explore who the characters were, where they came from. I don't know about the Austrian French thing. It was in the booklet, for instance. There is a audio commentary with Jean Moreau herself. Then you have a panel discussion about Francois Truffaut, and it's like a recorded thing where people talk in turn about the impact of Truffaut and what his film in the series that best resembles him at each of these various points. We have an audio lecture that runs alongside for 53 minutes. Jean Moreau in conversation, another 83 minutes. There's just so much in this release. I just think it's a fabulous release. And I have to admit, because I had these in artificial eye, I was dubious as to whether I would pick up the Truffaut releases like Le Peu Douce, Last Metro, and 400 Blows are in BFI. I was in two minds whether to pick them up. But as good as this, I don't really have much choice, do you? And that is my watch list for this week. I hope you got something out of that. Some pretty wide and varied recommendations for you there. What have you been watching over the past while? Have you seen any of these? Have you any opinions on these films that maybe contrast or complement what I've said about them? I would love to hear from you. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on the watch list. Take care.